All right, welcome back to another chapter from our daily bread. We want to pick up in chapter 31 as we continue our conversation about how Yahweh's instructions as far as how to act among each other, his rules and regulations and laws of restitution, to the temple, and even to the garments of the priests and their ordination. Now we're going to pick up here in chapter 31 where we're going to see a couple of individuals that he selected and gifted to do his work, as well as a short discussion about Sabbath. In verse 1, Yahweh said to Moses, "See, I have called by name Bezalel, the son of Uri, the son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah, and I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, and all craftsmanship to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. And behold, I have appointed with him Oliab, the son of Ahisamach, of the tribe of Dan. I have given to all able men ability, that they may make all that I have commanded you: the tent of meeting, the ark of the covenant testimony, and the mercy seat that is on it, and all the furnishings of the tent, the table and its utensils, and the pure lampstand with all its utensils, and the altar of incense, and the altar of burnt offering with all its utensils, and the basin and its stand, and the finely worked garments, the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and the garments of his sons for their service as priests, and the anointing oil, and the fragrant incense of the holy place. According to all that I have commanded you, they shall do." I love this passage. Why? Because remember when they left Egypt, as they got into the wilderness, he called for them to make a temple. He called for them to give out of their own heart and generosity different gifts of gold, silver, different cloths of purple and red. But where would they get all these things as slaves in the wilderness? And we recall that they looted the Egyptians. They plundered the Egyptians on their way out of Egypt. The Egyptians happily and eagerly gave to them, almost blessing them as they left. My point is this: Yahweh called them to give to a temple, but he never called them to give that which they didn't have. How frustrating that would be, to be called to give something you don't even have. And here is no different, right? Because he's already detailed out a very particular plan for how his temple should be made, and even how the garments of the priest should be constructed, down to the very pomegranate and bell on the fringes. Very specific work. Some of it needed to be made with one piece of gold. Some of it needed to be made carefully counting the cubits. But regardless, it requires someone of great skill and knowledge to do this. Remember that these individuals have spent quite a bit of their lives, their whole lives even, in slavery, doing the same task over and over again, day after day. And it didn't require a high level of skill, likely. Now they're being called to do something completely different. And here's the beautiful thing: Yahweh will never make a promise he won't provide for. He made provisions to make sure his promise to them that the temple would be made, the garments would be made, the basin would be made, the altar, all these things. He made provisions that they would have what they needed to do what they needed to do. So the challenge for us, or the call for us, is to remember that if he's planted something in you that is pressing and moving you in a certain way, just trust that he's made provisions. He may have an errand for you to assist you in it if necessary, but know that he has a seed planted in you with all the instructions you need to do that thing. Let's continue reading in chapter 31, verse 12. And Yahweh said to Moses, "You are to speak to the people of Israel and say, above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths. Above all, you shall keep my Sabbaths. For this is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I, Yahweh, sanctify you. You shall keep the Sabbath." Why? Because it is holy for you. So he's given us two reasons already why to keep the Sabbath. One, it's a sign between me and you. It's kind of like, makes me think of a wedding ring. Not that the wedding ring is the marriage. Not that the wedding ring is even the covenant. But it is a sign that I am married to my wife, and it's a sign to my wife that we're married. It's a reminder in the sense. The fact that we keep Sabbath as his people is a sign that we are his people. And it's a sign to other people as well, though it didn't say that. Verse 14 gives us a second reason. You shall keep it. Why? Because it is holy for you. For you it's holy. Why is it holy for you? Because he said, for 6 days I worked, and on the seventh day I rested and refreshed myself. And you shall do the same. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. This is how serious it was. There are laws and things that you could break, and there were consequences because of those, because you're breaking those laws. Not all consequences ended up in death. However, breaking the Sabbath certainly did, which should give us a good idea of how serious it is to Yahweh to observe the Sabbath. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. So just from that sentence, if you've never heard of Sabbath, or don't even fully understand it, but may have heard of it, you can understand what he's after. No one should be working. No one should be working. Not you, not any of your servants. Well, we don't have servants. But when you go to a store, a restaurant, or whatever, you are hiring people to serve you. They're having to work in this Sabbath. No one should be working, he says. Whoever does any work on it, that soul shall be cut off from among his people. 6 days shall work be done. But the seventh day is a Sabbath of solemn rest, holy to Yahweh. It's not a Jewish holiday. It's a Yahweh holiday. It's holy to who? To Yahweh. And this command was given to the people here, who consisted of, yes, the tribe of Judah, which is where Jews come from, but it wasn't just Judah. Yes, it was all the tribes that eventually were scattered throughout the rest of the world that you and I are likely a part of. And whether you know what tribe you're from or not, you must remember that in Romans 9:1 here, Romans 9:6, but it is not as though the word of God has failed. For not all who are descended from Israel belong to Israel. I know some of us are not accustomed to calling ourselves Israel, but that's what he means. He means his people. Not necessarily descendants of Abraham, as Romans 4 talks about as well. Because we're a part of a covenant of faith. And just like Abraham believed through faith, not through the actual bloodline. In verse 7, and not all are children of Abraham because they are his offspring, but through Isaac shall your offspring be named, or as be reckoned, as some translations have it. See, Isaac was the child of a promise, while being the line of Abraham was the child of the bloodline. See, not just because you're part of the bloodline, not only because you're part of the bloodline can you be in the line of Israel. So when we're talking about Israel here, given this commandment, we must remember that we too, if you're a believer and a disciple of Yahshua, are Israel. Everyone who profanes it shall be put to death. Whoever does any work, and we read that 6 days shall your work be done, but the 7 days is Sabbath of rest, holy to Yahweh. You know, I love this part too, where it says 6 days work shall be done. 6 days work shall be done. I heard it put this way. There is one day we need to make sure we're resting. On the Sabbath, that is, the seventh day. But on the flip side, we need to make sure we're working on the 6 days, Sunday through Friday. Seventh day would be the Sabbath. So let's make sure we all work, and even Sunday. Sunday's a day we like to take off, but it's okay to work. And matter of fact, the scriptures encourage us to do so. In verse 16, therefore the people of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, observing the Sabbath throughout their generations. The people of Israel, we talked about that just now, as a covenant forever. It is a sign between me and the people of Israel. That in the 6 days that Yahweh made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. And he gave and first of all, before we move on to this last verse, why talk about Sabbath right now? It seems kind of odd to all of a sudden talk about Sabbath just out of nowhere. We're talking about building the temple. We just finished talking about gifting men with the Spirit in order to do those things. And it's likely because they need to be remembered that in all this work that they were called to do, that was godly and holy, they were still to observe the Sabbath in doing it. See, just because it was good work that they were doing in constructing this temple, they still needed to rest. And so I think that's what he wanted to remind them. And he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. Written with the finger of God. Written down. What does it suggest that Moses was received a tablet that Yahweh wrote on to give to him? He didn't simply just tell him, this is what I want you to do. These are the 10 commandments, but he wrote it down. Matter of fact, it won't be the only time he writes something down or encouraged someone to write things down. Joshua, when he took the stones, was asked to write on the stones as well. And there's many cases where he does things and to call us to remembrance. One of them is taking notes. I don't know how you are as far as note taking, but he wants them to take notes and revisit those notes. What did he actually say on the 8th commandment? Someone may ask. Oh, I think it was this. Well, we don't have to guess. We can go look at the notes. Look at what was written down. 18. And he gave to Moses, when he had finished speaking with him on Mount Sinai, the 2 tablets of the testimony, tablets of stone written with the finger of God. Okay, we just read that. So a short chapter there talking about how Yahweh will make provisions for what he promised and giving you the ability to do exactly what it is he called you to do. And lastly, to remember Sabbath, the 7th. Not a Sabbath, not a day of my choosing, but the day he chose, that we should also rest. And this can be a challenge in our day-to-day because we get very busy and we want to do a lot of great things. But even in all our desires to do great things, make money, and who knows what else, he wants you to observe a day of rest that is holy to him. May Yahweh bless you and keep you, and thanks for tuning in. And until next time, God bless.